Hello, and welcome. I'm unsure of what to call this show for now, but whatever it is, welcome to it. My goal here is to provide thoughtful analysis, unique perspectives, and a deeper understanding of the different kinds of dark or spooky media that shaped, I guess, selfishly me into the adult that I am today, but less selfishly, an entire generation and even the generations that come after. Basically, if your favorite holiday is Halloween and your favorite season is autumn, mine too. And if you want a deeper and more thoughtful analysis into some of our favorite things, then I think you're in the right place. It's human nature to fear the unknown. It's downright scary, wondering what's hiding in the dark, what's lurking around that corner, or what might be sneaking up behind you. However, I found a story that perfectly encapsulates the opposite feeling. A story that highlights how knowing the unknowable is sometimes far more terrifying than the former. There's something tantalizing about the idea of seeing beyond the veil of what we call reality. From Plato's allegory of the cave to the simulated worlds of the Matrix, stories have long explored the unsettling notion that what we perceive is only a fragment of what truly exists. But what happens when that veil is lifted, unexpectedly? When ordinary people stumble upon extraordinary truths that they were never meant to know? That's exactly the premise behind the Are You Afraid of the Dark episode called The Tale of the Super Specs. On the surface, it's a seemingly simple story about a prank gone wrong. But if you peel back the layers, then you'll find a chilling exploration of perception, alternate realities, and the consequences of seeing too much. We're not just going to recap the episode. I'm going to dissect it. You and I are going to unwrap its narrative structure, analyze its visual metaphors, and dive into its deeper thematic implications. And along the way, we'll draw connections to other works of pop culture that explore similar themes. Because, as with all good horror, it's not just about what we see, it's about what we don't. Every story starts somewhere, and this one begins with a simple prank. We're introduced to Weeds and Mary Beth. They're a teenage couple who frequent Sardau's magic mansion. It's a shop as full of oddities as its owner is of quirks. Weeds is your typical prankster, more interested in finding ways to amuse himself than in considering the potential consequences of his actions. Sardau, played with delightful eccentricity, by the way, by Richard Dumont, sells Weeds a bag of magical tricks, among of which is a seemingly innocuous pair of glasses, the Super Specs. These glasses, however, are anything but ordinary. When Mary Beth, Weeds' skeptical but curious girlfriend, puts them on, she begins to see shadowy figures lurking in the corners of her vision. Figures that aren't there when she removes the specs. It's a simple but effective visual device, one that immediately establishes the core tension of the episode, which is what we see versus what we don't. The concept of a device that reveals hidden truths isn't necessarily new to storytelling. You and I know that. It's been explored in everything from the They Live sunglasses that expose the world's hidden overlords, to the Lament configuration box from Hellraiser that opens up a portal to a dimension of unimaginable horrors. The Super Specs, like these other artifacts, act as a bridge between realities, giving Mary Beth a glimpse into something that she was never meant to see. But Why are we, you and I, so fascinated by these kinds of stories? Why do we crave the idea of discovering hidden layers to our reality, even when those layers might be terrifying? Is it because deep down, you and I know that there's more to this world than meets the eye? Or is it because the unknown is a playground for our imaginations? A space where anything is possible, even our deepest fears? I don't know. As Mary Beth continues to use the super specs, the once fleeting shadows become more persistent, more real. They start to appear in mirrors, they reflect off windows, and they stand just out of reach, always watching. But, and this is crucial, they never interact with her directly. They're not like the malevolent spirits of a haunted house, nor are they monsters lurking in the dark. They're just simply there, existing on the periphery of her reality, as if they belong to another world altogether. Maybe they do. The concept of an alternate reality existing alongside our own is a trope that's been explored in countless works of fiction. Think of the Upside Down from Stranger Things. It's a mirror world that's both familiar and horrifyingly different, too. Or the parallel dimension in Doctor Who, where slight variations in history can create entirely new worlds. These narratives play with the idea that there are unseen forces at work, realms that exist just out of reach, invisible to the naked eye, but very real nonetheless. In the tale of the super specs, the horror comes not from the figures themselves, but from what they represent. It's an unknown and mysterious reality that's bleeding into our own. It's a concept that raises a host of unsettling questions. If these figures exist just beyond our perception, how many other things might be out there, unseen and unnoticed? And what would happen if the barrier between our worlds were to break down completely? Mary Beth's initial curiosity quickly turns into fear as the figures become more pronounced, more present. But even as her terror mounts, she struggles with an equally unsettling realization. She is the only one who can see them. Weeds, ever the skeptic, dismisses her fears as just mere side effects of a joke gone too far. Mr. Sardo, intrigued by her descriptions, seems more concerned with maintaining his business than with the possible consequences of his merchandise. This kind of isolation that Mary Beth is feeling right now is a powerful theme in horror. It's the terror of knowing of something that others don't. It's being aware of a threat that nobody else can see or even comprehend. We see this in works like Rosemary's Baby, where the protagonist's growing awareness of the evil around her is met with disbelief and condescension. Or in The Invasion of the Body Snatchers, where the paranoia of seeing familiar faces turn into something alien is just dismissed as hysteria. For Mary Beth, though, the super specs are both a gift and a curse. They allow her to see beyond the veil of her reality, but they also trap her in a world of fear and uncertainty. She's caught between two worlds, unable to fully inhabit either of them. And as the shadowy figures become more aggressive, it becomes clear that whatever is on the other side of those glasses is beginning to take notice of her as well. But I think my question to you is, what is it about seeing things that others can't that makes it so terrifying? Is it the fear of the isolation? Of being disconnected from those around us? Or is it something deeper? A fear of that what we might see might change us in ways that can't be undone. The true brilliance of this episode isn't in the fun, glittery rainbow effect that covers the screen every time we get to see the other dimension. It's not in the perfectly crafted tension of showing additional figures every time Mary Beth puts her specs on. And I would even go as far as to say that it isn't even in the twist ending that still has me questioning my own perception of my own reality all these years later. The episode's true brilliance lies in its exploration of perception itself. The super specs don't just show Mary Beth another reality, they force her to confront the fragility of her own, which she thought was real, which she believed to be true. All those things are called into question with every shadowy figure that she gets a glimpse of. Her perception of the world is shattered, and with it, her sense of security is too. This theme is echoed in countless other stories, right? Like in The Matrix. From Neo's awakening to life's true reality forces him to question everything that he's ever known. In Black Mirror's playtest, a character's immersion in a simulated horror experience blurs the line between what's real and what isn't, leading, of course, to a breakdown of his perception of reality. These kinds of narratives remind us that our grasp of reality is, well, tenuous at best. It's that what we see and what we know aren't always aligned. The tale of the super specs asks us to consider, what if the world as we know it is merely a construct, just a comforting lie that shields us from truths too terrible to comprehend? What if the things that we can't see are just as real as the things that we can? And what exactly would happen if we were suddenly, irrevocably exposed to those hidden truths, desperate for answers? Mary Beth is desperate for answers. She returns to Sardo's shop, and in a rare moment of vulnerability, Sardo admits that the super specs were not meant to be sold. They're a window, he explains. A window into another dimension. One that's now bleeding into their own. The figures that she's been seeing aren't ghosts or figments of her imagination. They're real beings, existing in a parallel reality right next to ours. And they may be just as confused and frightened as she is. This revelation is both a relief and, honestly, a new sense of terror. Mary Beth's fear of the unknown is replaced by a fear of the unknowable. She realizes that she's not alone in her reality, but that knowledge doesn't offer very much comfort. Instead, it introduces a new layer of horror, the understanding that her actions have consequences beyond her own world. The idea of multiple realities is a common theme in science fiction and horror. I mean, take a look at the Dark Tower series by Stephen King. The protagonist has to navigate a multiverse where the barriers between worlds are thin and permeable. In Fringe, the conflict between two parallel universes threatens to unravel the very fabric of existence. These kinds of stories play with the notion that reality simply isn't just fixed, but it's instead a web of possibilities, each one as real and fragile as the next. But, the tale of the super specs adds a unique twist to this concept. The horror isn't in the existence of another reality. We can comprehend that pretty easy, we get it. The horror, in fact, is in the characters have inadvertently broken the rules. They've seen too much. They've crossed boundaries that were never meant to be crossed, and now there's no going back. Sardo, in his typically bumbling fashion, attempts to fix the situation by performing a ritual to seal off the other dimension. But if you're familiar with the show, then you'll know that most of Sardo's endeavors don't go as planned. Instead of closing the portal, he ends up trapping Mary Beth and Weeds in a tiny, dark bubble of existence. A liminal space, if you will, between their reality and this other. The final shot of the episode is something that still haunts me even today. It's that knife twist moment that makes you sit back in your chair, and it forces you to take a moment to process what you've just seen. Mary Beth and Weeds have lost. The figures in the other dimension have come out successful. Have we been rooting for the wrong people this whole time? Was there even a quote-unquote right group of people to be rooting for at all? I mean, I guess who cares that we were introduced to Weeds and Mary Beth 22 minutes ago? There's this whole other mirror reality full of people just like Weeds and Mary Beth that were fighting and going through the same tension and turmoil that they were going through this whole time. We just didn't know. But again, that's what makes the episode so special. The scary thing isn't simply not knowing what's on the other side. No, the real scary thing is knowing what's on the other side and being able to do nothing about it. Mary Beth and Weeds are now invisible and forgotten, and they're left to their fate. Meanwhile, Sardo, oblivious to the true power that he's been meddling with, cheerfully closes up his magic shop. It is a gut-wrenching conclusion that reinforces the episode's theme, which is some things are just better left unseen. Some boundaries are better left uncrossed. This ending is reminiscent of the fate of the characters and a lot of Lovecraftian horror, where the pursuit of forbidden knowledge often leads to madness, death, or worse. So, the next time you find yourself tempted to look a little deeper, to look behind the curtain of reality, remember Mary Beth and Weeds. Remember the shadowy figures that lurk just out of sight, waiting to be seen. And ask yourself, are you truly prepared for what you might find? Thanks for joining me on this journey beyond the veil of reality. And remember, the world is full of mysteries, but sometimes it's better just to let them remain mysteries. And I know, listen, Are You Afraid of the Dark is a campy 1990s Nickelodeon time capsule. But the lessons that were taught to us so many years ago from that show and the themes that we were exposed to are infinite. Is that the right word? Everlasting. Much like me, they go on and on. You get it. Never stop seeing the world in your own unique way.